Welcome, my name's Amy. I am one of the Higher Education Progression Advisors from HeppSY, and we're also joined by Caroline, my colleague. I'm just going to let her introduce herself.
Hello, good afternoon everybody. My name is Caroline. I'm also a Higher Education Progression Advisor working with HeppSY. I've worked specifically with the Rotherham and North Nottinghamshire area for the past 2 years or so. And previous to that, I worked as a careers advisor in the Sheffield Hallam Careers Service as well.
Thanks, Caroline. So we are here for our 45-minute careers CPD session today. So thank you to all the staff on call for joining us. And we're hoping to give you some quick tips and inspiring ideas for engaging Key Stage 3 students with careers education, or that's our aim. And we've got a few more aims for you in a moment. If you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat. If we have a discussion, feel free to unmute if you prefer to do that. But please get involved. We want everyone's ideas. It's kind of a sharing expertise and current ideas that you might have done previously. We will send the slides afterwards if anyone does want them, so don't worry too much about links and things. We'll get those to you. So the aims for this session then. So we want to understand the importance and requirements of careers activity in year 7, 8 and 9 for those Key Stage 3 learners. We're going to cover 4 key approaches to engage younger learners. And we want you to reflect on your own practice and share resources and approaches that work for you. So we hope you'll find a few of those useful. And then finally, we want to find out more about resources and activity offers to Key Stage 3 by HeppSY. And we'll have Alex, our colleague, joining us, and also what Caroline and I within the HeppSY team can offer. So over to you, Caroline.
So when we were preparing this session, we started by kind of gathering some of the changes, some of the things that have been happening recently around what actually is it that you as secondary school institutions are required to do in relation to your year 7 to year 9 groups. And just kind of summarise a bit of that on the next few slides for you. Some of you will know this already, so just bear with me or feel free to add further details. But interesting to see just some specific mentions of those year groups within the HeppSY benchmarks that you're all working towards and within the Compass assessment tool that goes along with that. So these were some of the specific times I saw. So it was mentioning particularly in relation to HeppSY benchmark 2. So they're asking a clear question around, by age 14, have pupils had access to and used up-to-date info about career paths and labour market information? So that's the challenge, both looking at where they each could progress in the future and around what's happening locally for those individuals. Also, the request that each year for year 7, year 8 and year 9, pupils have had at least one employer encounter per year. So either employer or employee was mentioned specifically. And so this is something that I'm sure a lot of you have been involved in before. I know we'll have people here that are careers leaders, people here that are teachers, people that are careers advisors, but can be useful just to kind of have that information for if you're talking with colleagues that might not quite buy into why you're doing this. Why are you encouraging them to get employers in? And it's actually there as part of HeppSY, one encounter per year, right from year 7. And there's a quote there taken from one of the HeppSY guidance documents mentioning how that might differ as you go through the school. So mentioning that younger year groups can benefit from kind of that lighter touch at the beginning and thinking about broad information as they start thinking about their careers, and the emphasis that learning outcomes, like all learning outcomes throughout the school, should differ depending on the age of the student. Can go on from there, Amy, thank you. And then in addition to that, what actually are schools required to do? And we have seen a change here in the Skills for Jobs white paper that came out in January 2021. And there was previously the statutory requirement from year 8 to provide the independent career guidance. And in the latest version of the Skills for Jobs paper, this has been amended to year 7. So at present, we're still waiting on further clarification of that. So that will be one we'll definitely be keeping an eye on. What exactly does that mean? But something to take note of, that perhaps when previously it was left till a bit later in the school, there has been that shift to start that sooner. And the quote there saying that it should actually be embedded in the life of every school and college. And that's kind of a positive for us as careers professionals, really, that this has been recognised by the government. It's been seen as important for transition and emphasised right from year 7. And for something to be embedded with that word, it really emphasises that it can't just be a bit here and there. It can't just be dipping in and dipping out or doing a drop down day at the end of school. You know, something to be embedded. It goes right through the life of that school, and the sooner you're starting that, the sooner that's allowing that to be embedded. We also see a link to Ofsted. So even for staff that are not familiar with Gatsby, and your colleagues or your senior leadership that you may be speaking with, they are going to be interested in the things that affect Ofsted, definitely. And we see that to meet that good descriptor on Ofsted, that it is important for all pupils to receive unbiased information about next steps and high quality careers guidance. So we see it listed within that good descriptor, and we see it as forming as part of the Baker clause as well, so that all your students should have access to information about their further education routes, vocational and technical routes. And we have seen another shift in recent months around. There has been a mention of more form or tough action if you don't comply with that Baker clause as a school. And again, we've kind of waited for a bit more guidance on that, but that's some information that's come out recently. Can we go on to the next slide, Amy? So what is the case for starting early? Aside from the things that you have to do, why is it a good idea? Why is it kind of embedded in these guidelines? And we've seen in recent months the new CDI career development framework coming out, so for the Career Development Institution. And it's really interesting reading, actually, and a really useful document that I recommend to each of you that we can put the links to take a look at after today, as something that can really help to shape your careers plan as a school and help to make it as good as it can be. Whereas from the Gatsby benchmarks, we see that it has a focus on kind of telling you what your careers programme should look like and the areas it should cover. And the CDI actually phrases their development framework as in being focused on showing the intention, showing what you hope to achieve from your careers programme. You know, it's not just about how you're going to get there, so really valuable. And there's this concept in the CDI framework about the spiral curriculum, and they've listed 6 different areas that are really key within your careers programme, so including managing career, balancing work and life, growing through life. And it's recommending that there's this spiral approach, that you're not just dipping into each of those once, that you're having chance to touch on each of them at year 7, to go deeper at year 8, to go deeper further as you go through the school. And some of these areas, you might be challenging assumptions that they've had since childhood, or challenging stereotypes that are kind of inbuilt within perhaps young people's families or within the media. So actually that tackling things more than once can be really important to deepen that understanding. We see the effectiveness of starting early as well. So the research listed in there from Hooley, Merritt and Sampson looked at over 100 studies and actually saw that career guidance as being defined by activities which support learning about future lives, learning and work. So looking at that big picture, more than just a one-to-one appointment, but that whole careers programme. We saw that as having an effect on retention of students, on academic performance, and that ability to make successful transitions, both within the school between key stages and after the end of school. And a great stat there from Careers and Enterprise Company research that students are 18 times more likely to be motivated to learn if that teacher knows their hopes and dreams. So right through school, that embedding of careers can have such a positive influence on the learning and the kind of attitudes and the retention within your schools.
Okay, so what we want you to do now is have a think about what benefits you've seen young people gain from careers activities in year 7, 8 and 9, and that could be anything to do with anything that we've mentioned so far, or it could be something that that your school has put on yourselves. So if you could post anything in the chat or unmute if you prefer, then that would be brilliant, and hopefully we'll start a bit of a discussion going. It could be anything at all. It could be something small or a huge, big activity that you've seen. So whilst you think about the benefits, the other thing that we also want you to go on to is the challenges, but we'll get to that. Benefits definitely first. I can see a few people are typing, which is lovely. To get us started, Caroline, what would you say is one of the benefits that you've seen in young people?
I think it can just be enjoyable. I think it makes school kind of more interesting. I know for myself, coming through school, there was a lot of lessons that personally I didn't always see that connection to work, and therefore I wasn't that motivated in some of those lessons. So it's going to link to kind of just enjoyment in the day and interest. We've got a few others coming here as well. That's a great one there from Mrs. Smoot. Someone said, I didn't know you could get a job doing that. So just a bit of that kind of wow factor. Got Rachel sharing about it can lead to increased knowledge of roles and pathways. That's a great point. Increased aspirations. I think that's come up time and time again, hasn't it? In other CPD sessions we've done that knowing about more career options can lead to the raised aspirations. And we've got Elaine sharing that she's delivered a number of group work sessions around stereotypes, post-16 options and other careers and employer events for students. Brilliant.
Yeah. And we've still got people typing, which is even better.
And shall we go on to the next question as those are just coming in?
Yep. So we've also got the challenges that I just mentioned. So what challenges do you find when seeking to engage younger students with a careers activity? So we've got some brilliant benefits in there, but what challenges do you maybe find?
Like we said, you're very welcome to unmute and speak if you'd like as well.
So we've got one from Rebecca. A benefit: a student came up to me at a careers fair, remembering their visit to college in year 9, and enthusiastic to speak to me about careers again. That's brilliant. Yeah, that's really nice. One of the challenges that Sarah's mentioned is lack of self-belief. Yeah, and a bit of that kind of confidence that they need. Samantha, to them it feels like it's such a long time until they need to make their choices about their careers and post-16 or post-18 options. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And then when it seems to come around, it's very, very quick, isn't it? And I think they think, oh my goodness, how on earth do I make this decision? Yeah, I absolutely understand that, Samantha. Have we got anything else? I think we've got another person typing, but if we
can always revisit some comments as they come through, can't we, as we go on?
Definitely. Here we are. So Rebecca, thank you for adding that in. So less pressure in year 10 and year 11. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so let's go on to the next one.
So we're going to go on to our kind of top 4 tips or top 4 themes that we thought of that can be really useful when working with those younger students. And introduce number 1, broaden knowledge of career options available. We're going to play a short video from a piece of research called Drawing the Future, which you may be familiar with, but are really interesting to see the effect of. So just have a watch of this video.
Great, thank you.
That video just gives us an insight into that piece of research, and I just picked out a few key aspects from that on the next slide to mention. If we could go on to that, lovely. So this was a huge piece of research, worldwide research, looking at young people at different stages, both from primary and going into secondary as well. And amazingly, we saw that from as young as 7, from that very young age, the career aspirations are based on people that they know, based on people in their immediate circle, their family members, the people that live on their street, and such a big proportion of that too, 45% saw that film and TV as one of the biggest factors. And we all know from watching TV and looking at the media that it is not always representative. It is not always telling the true story. It might be kind of pushing certain careers or certain assumptions as well. We see, as was mentioned there, that gender stereotyping was evident worldwide, not just in our own country. So in order to tackle a big challenge, we have to start early. We have to kind of have different messages coming through, different role models. And really interesting too, particularly that I found, was that the patterns of jobs that young people were choosing or were saying they were interested in were very similar when you looked at 7-year-olds and when you looked at 17-year-olds. When you think about how much young people learn in that time, it's absolutely amazing that perhaps in some instances the career learning isn't really moving on. And if you think about the fact that young people are influenced by the people around them, that's going to perpetuate the kind of those divides in societies as well, in terms of opportunities, in terms of what roles their parents have gone on to. They're going to see those roles first and foremost. And on the next slide, we've got just a few thoughts really on what you might be able to do about this. And we saw within the CDI framework, they've got different learning aims at different stages, at Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. And I found the language here really interesting, that the language for Key Stage 3 around career knowledge, there was a lot of focus around being aware of. So just really emphasising that the more that you can be aware of different opportunities at that early stage, as you then progress into Key Stage 4, you've got that option to consider or to research or to plan. But I think, like one of the individuals mentioned in chat, that someone saying, I didn't know you could do a job doing that. Just broadening what young people are aware of is a great first step. You might be using real life examples to challenge some of those stereotypes. You might be looking at it in a really holistic way, can be useful. So thinking about, how does the job that an individual goes on to do affect their well-being? How does it affect how much money they've got in their pocket? How does it affect where they live or how much they travel? And this is something we'll always bring into sessions with young people. You might also link it into hobbies and interests of students as well. Of course, there's that focus on link to curriculum, but you can link to the things that are going to capture their interests as well, especially at those younger year groups. And you might use employer and employee encounters as well to challenge some of those stereotypes. So passing over to Amy for number 2.
Thank you. Okay, so making it fun and making it real. I think definitely for the younger years, then they maybe need to think out of the box. So like Caroline's just said, was it Sarah who said, oh, I didn't know that I could do a job in that. And I think that's a way of getting their interest and kind of providing some of that, isn't there? Some of the other ways, the shock tactics. So what are the funniest jobs? What are the scariest jobs? Caroline pointed me to this bonkers book of jobs, which has got lots and lots of those in. So if anyone's interested, I'd definitely have a quick look at that. And obviously there's loads and loads of those books and resources available. Subject tasters from colleges and universities. I know that lots of them are doing like pre-COVID, they were doing a zombie apocalypse and lots of other forensics and things that might spark interest in some of your students. Obviously those have switched online, but they will return in person. Videos from employers doing unusual jobs. So there's lots on I Could. I've used a few of those previously on very unusual jobs that I'd never heard of. And then sometimes staff real life stories as well. So sharing your own previous jobs, sometimes good and bad, can be beneficial for students to show them that you haven't always been a teacher, that you don't live in the school, that you maybe had quite a different life before the job that you're doing now. That can be a really nice way of just sharing those stories.
So on to number 3. As we see from the image of the stick of rock there, how in your school is careers and the world of work interlinked and embedded throughout your curriculum, and something that all staff members take responsibility for, not just yourself who may have that particular responsibility. And you might do this in a number of different ways. I'm sure there's many other points you could add to this, and we've got a full session just on this topic really. But sharing good quality resources, and if you're a careers leader in your school, it might be about helping the subject teachers to have access to those resources for their subjects. It might be about involving virtual work experience within the subjects that you're teaching or that you're involved in. It might be about looking beyond obvious career connections. Yes, someone that studies maths could go on to be a mathematician or a maths teacher, but what else could they do? Can they look beyond those obvious ones and just really broadening that thinking, as we said? And it's that opportunity to stress the importance of maths and English as a baseline for many careers, and just emphasise that it is essential no matter what you do to develop those skills. Got a few quick wins on the slides here, and again we can share links for some of these, including some of those sector-specific organisations. We really recommend the STEM Centre, Royal Geographical Society. We've got ambassadors that can come in and share experiences either in person or virtually. You might think about what's visually in your classrooms. Can you display career stories, career posters that are often available free of charge, to just inspire and raise aspirations, as was mentioned. And we've got a HeppSY Careers digital suite that gives starter slides for each curriculum area that you can download and use with your classes.
So the final suggestion from us then, using options choices to instigate discussions. So following on from what Caroline's just mentioned about curriculum resources and looking at those options choices, because not all students absolutely love the core subjects, as we know, and different ways of doing that. So future career options related to different subject topics, and like Caroline said, maybe think of the more unusual ones or the ones that that students haven't heard of to broaden that knowledge. Knowing yourself as well, and knowing what they are, maybe where their strengths and their skills lie, and that can be helped by the Buzz quiz. If you haven't come across that, then that's on icould.com. Very, very quick quiz for them to do, and it suggests careers for them that might be useful. You might want to think about adding a bit about careers in options booklets, so when they're picking their Year 9 options and those decision-making points, but also involving parents, maybe having something about careers on options evenings, or any kind of communication that you send out to parents, just so that they're fully aware of, right, well, if I study this course, where can it lead me in the future? Real life tasks, which I'm sure you do already in some of your lessons, and they'll be vast and varied depending on the curriculum that student's studying. But then also thinking about others' careers journeys, so from their GCSEs upwards. So I know that at university level we tend to just talk about their university course and what they've done afterwards. But maybe students who have previously left your school or college, and any staff, they might talk about what they studied for their GCSE options and where that's led them. And then more broadly, obviously, it's carrying on those positive conversations with students on all options. So any staff member who has those conversations with students, challenging the stereotypes and making them feel like it's possible. So gaining a bit of that self-confidence and self-belief, as we mentioned earlier. So what we're going to do now is, we've given you a few of our ideas, but what we want you to do is, in a breakout room, we're just going to have a couple of breakout rooms just for thinking about resources and activities that work well with Key Stage 3. So is there anything else that you've done, or any other ideas that you could share with this group? We might, do you think we could do it just on the call, Caroline?
That's up to you.
Sure, yeah. We have got quite a few people on call, so it would be good to go into breakout rooms. Oh my goodness, apologies, I went too far. So this is just your opportunity to share any other of those resources and activities that work well or have previously worked well for you. So whilst we sort those breakout rooms, if you want to have a think about them, and if anyone wants to pop anything in chat to get us started, then that would be good.
Do post in chat, as Amy said. We've got a few things coming through already. Samantha said anything that's an activity rather than sitting and watching a presentation. Yeah. Actually doing something physically, that's great.
I definitely agree with that, Samantha. Yeah, I think students really appreciate that, don't they?
And particularly any kind of web links or any organisations you recommend, do just pop those down and we'll circulate those to everyone after, even if we don't have time to kind of talk through them all today.
In a moment, we'll also share with you what we can offer, but obviously it's good to get that expertise from you. Rebecca's just popped in, understanding keywords. They might start hearing about options. Yeah, that's a really valid point. Just actually explaining them to them and not assuming that they know all of those different options, and, you know, something as simple as, do you know what this qualification is over this one? I think that's a really, really valid point.
And that goes back to that point around giving that knowledge at the younger year groups, and then allowing you to kind of be able to use that knowledge and make the decisions as you go later through school. So not pressuring students to have that set career in mind at those younger years, but just opening up that discussion.
So thanks, Samantha. Knowing what their journey will be in over the next few years, what year to expect certain things, for example, what year to pick options, what year to pick post-16. Yeah, I think that's a really good awareness to have for students, so that they can fully understand what's going to be expected and kind of prepare for that. Yeah, very valid point. And then Elaine, I ran a guess the job activity and looked at skills, etc., which worked fantastic with students as it offered different jobs to explore. Yeah, nice. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you for those suggestions. Have you got anything to add, Caroline, or shall we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, following on from Elaine's point, that links to just that fun element, doesn't it? And just almost amazing people and shocking people, things that they might not expect. I've seen some schools do an activity where they're inviting guests in, and the students have to guess what jobs that those individuals have done, and it's always something totally different than what the stereotype might be, and just really challenging assumptions. Can be memorable for students as well, something they'll remember as they go through school. Definitely. Do you add any further things you think about into the chat? We're still keen to collate all those together, especially any kind of web links or resources or external organisations you work with as well. I know Rebecca and Samantha here from R&M, they offer a programme of activities for schools as well, so they might have lots of opportunities to share as well with their own programme. But we're just going to pass over to our colleague Alex now, who works for our sister organisation HeppSY, to share a bit about HeppSY's offer for year 7, 8 and 9.
Hi everyone, my name's Alex Bairstow and I work for HeppSY, as Caroline said, the other wing of our organisation. And we have an offer for all secondary schools within the Sheffield City region, that spans from year 7 all the way through to year 11. So we operate very much within that pre-16 space. What I want to talk a little bit is how schools can access different elements of those offers. So the graphic that you've got in front of you is just an illustration of kind of core strands of work that we deliver to schools and to secondary school pupils. But if you focus just on the year 7, 8 and 9, what you'll see is that essentially it's almost 2 strands of activity. The first one is very much focused on getting students to understand what higher education is and the benefits to them of considering higher education. And because they're a relatively young cohort, we sprinkle in a little bit of student finance, but the focus is very much on exploring what university is or higher education is and how they can start to understand the elements of it that might appeal to them. But I think in the context of today's kind of CPD session, I want to focus a little bit more on our choices and pathways strand. It was interested in the chat function. Somebody mentioned one of the resources that people found useful was helping students to understand that academic pathway that they're on, or where they are now and what they're studying right now fits within that broader context of what they'll be doing in the course of their further in their higher education years. And that's very much what we cover in year 7, 8 and 9 in terms of our choices and pathways strand. So you tend to find that in year 7 and 8, we're very much focusing on the upcoming choice that they've got, the next one on the horizon, which is very much looking at their GCSE options, but then setting that in the context of where that fits within the next set of educational choices that they've got, the importance of trying their best, and the different choices and the different decisions that they'll have coming up. What the sessions then also do, which we've got some really positive feedback on, is it then looks at the skill of how to make an informed decision at whatever stage you're at. So often we actually take it away from education and we talk about other decisions that you might need to make. Maybe something as simple as choosing between going to the cinema and staying at home with your friends and watching Netflix, but then applying that skill in terms of the different decision-making factors that you need to make, things like doing your research, things about whether or not you should or shouldn't choose what your friends do, getting reviews, thinking about the cost of things, thinking about the availability of things, and then applying that to the educational context as well. So that is something, as I say, that is available to all of the secondary schools within the Sheffield City region. Can you just click the next slide for me, please? In terms of how we can offer those sessions to schools, obviously we're in a very particular environment, as you're all aware. So the vast proportion of our delivery at the minute is delivered remotely into schools via Zoom or via Microsoft Teams. It tends to be kind of information giving, assembly style, lecture style presentations, with an optional Q&A from current university students and recent graduates that can really kind of flesh out the bones of the content that we're giving and provide that student voice, to help students get that first-hand experience of what it might be like to go to university, or to understand a little bit about the decision making that our recent graduates and current students made in terms of how they chose their GCSE options, how they chose between sixth form or college or an apprenticeship, how they chose between A-levels and BTECs, and the decision-making factors that were involved in that. And that, again, that's been kind of really insightful, I think, and our schools have found that really, really useful. I think, as Amy alluded to, hopefully we want to be able to be back to delivering face-to-face very soon, and that brings into a range of different options that schools can take advantage of, which may well be our graduates and current students coming back to school and actually delivering workshops and interactive sessions in the classroom. It might also be back to bringing students onto campus, so they can actually see university facilities firsthand. They can have a tour. They can actually see what it is that we're talking about when we're speaking to them in the classroom as well. And the other thing I should say, again, I think which is linked to one of Caroline's points, is that the way that we try to deliver within HeppSY is incrementally. So we want to be engaging with students in year 7, and again in year 8, and year 9, and in 10, and year 11. So they're building on that learning year in, year out, and also that the activity that we can deliver for schools, either face-to-face or remotely, can be supplemented by other activities, either through other providers or through resources that we can make available to you in schools that can be self-delivered as well. Can you just click on the next slide for me, please? So hopefully some of you will have heard of something called the HeppSY Hub, or some of you will have already registered for it. It's the name of our website, and there's a particular section of this website, or there's two that I'll point out. Thank you very much. That's the website there for you. There's two elements to it that I'd like to point out. One is a huge searchable resource bank. So you can search by year group, you can search by activity strand, you can search by material type if you want a presentation or a film or a worksheet or an information booklet, and you can essentially access hundreds of different resources that you can then use in the classroom. We've got lots of bespoke resources that fit really neatly into a registration period or form time or a PHSE session, and then we've got some more detailed sessions that take a little bit more time to deliver. We actually have pre-recorded versions of all of our presentations as well. So we've got, I think there's 10 presentations all in all that we've recorded our engagement assistance delivering, and they're available to schools as well. So for example, if we are unable to book in a session with a school, but you've got some flexibility within your timetable, you can download a 20-minute presentation for year 9s on choices and pathways, and just press play, and it's there for you to use. The second part of the HeppSY Hub that I'd like to point you in the direction of, in terms of how you can access more of the broader provision of our partnership, is through a section which allows you to search for outreach opportunities that are delivered by, for example, our 2 university partners, Sheffield Hallam and the University of Sheffield, but also external providers and also our local further education colleges that offer HE provision. So again, there's an opportunity to search for open days, taster days, bespoke visits, essentially any different opportunity to explore or find out a little bit more about higher education, but from a whole range of different partners, you can access from that website. So as I say, if you haven't done so already, please have a look on the website and register for it, and that is what will give you access to the resources that you can access, and also the outreach opportunities provided by our local partners as well. Thanks, Caroline. That was my final slide.
Thanks very much, Alex. So, as well as HeppSY, then we also have HeppSY. So what Alex was saying about incremental, so how it works for those of you who might be schools or colleges, although I think we've only got a few colleges on the call, you would have year 7 and year 8 activity from HeppSY, and then you would move on to HeppSY activity for year 9 onwards. So that's how it works for the HeppSY schools. So all of our activities, we've got absolutely all sorts, but we've got a few on screen now that we have picked out that we think is probably most applicable to what we've been talking about today. So an introduction to careers or careers of the future, are 2 sessions that we offer for year 9s, and as you can see, lots and lots of other ones as well. A few to pick out for you: careers in the curriculum. We do a range of different subjects, and that's where we have a look at the skills and the careers that you might be interested in if you were to take that subject further. Post 16 options, post 18 options, where it can lead in higher education. We've also got recent graduates who talk about their experiences at university as part of me and my degree, and then the partners, like Alex has mentioned, do the taster sessions, and there's also Future Heroes, a digital resource. So there's absolutely all sorts. Okay, so in conclusion then, I realise that we've run a few minutes over, so apologies. Careers guidance is now a requirement from year 7, as you've already heard, and starting early and using that spiral curriculum approach, like in that diagram that Caroline talked about earlier, that lays that foundation for future decisions. So if you focus on awareness and raising awareness and broadening knowledge, then that's really beneficial for Key Stage 3, and then that will start changing into those different wordings like the research and the knowledge of. A whole school approach and embedding in the curriculum is crucial. That links back to the Gatsby benchmarks, and then linking to key decision and transition points can be really, really useful for year 9 options, for post 16 options, etc. So that's it from us. Does anyone have any questions, any comments? Just whilst you might be thinking about those, then there's a few links on here. So we have got another CPD session next week if you're interested, and we have got a parent and carer event on Thursday. Same kind of time, I think it's a little bit later, I think it starts at 5, so if you want the information on that to pass on to your parents, then please do. And then Caroline's just popped a survey in the chat, and we'd really love you to give us a bit of feedback on this session, just so that when we offer them next year, we know what you want, but also how we can improve in the future. There is also our call chat click link on there, so Caroline and I are available if you have any questions, but there's our other colleagues on there as well if you wanted to send any of us a message. So does anyone have any final questions? Anything that we haven't covered, anything that you're not sure about, or any comments? Comments are good too. I think we've stunned them to silence, Caroline, so I'm going to assume that hopefully we've answered most of your questions and it's been useful what we have shared with you. But as I say, we will share the slides with you afterwards so you can get all of those links, and we'll share the ideas that went into the chat as well.
Thank you all so much for coming. for giving up your time today. Hope you have a really good rest of the week and rest of the term as you look ahead to that summer break now. So thanks everyone, and pass on our best wishes to your colleagues in school, and we look forward to seeing you again at future CPD events. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.